Hello, welcome to the October 13th, 2023 Club Cubase livestream. My name is Greg Undo and I'm the host of the livestream today. If you have not attended a livestream before, how it works is you can ask questions in the live chat field or send questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de. When asking questions, if you could specify which version of Cubase you're running, is it like version number 11 or 12? Which level of Cubase, if it's Cubase LE, AI, Elements, Artist, or Pro, and also which operating system. That information is often helpful. Realize that my ability to answer questions in real time may soon be eclipsed, so if when you ask a question, if you don't get an immediate response, at times I may be 20 to 30 minutes behind the questions, but if you don't see an immediate response, if you could refrain from repeating the question over and over, that would be appreciated. It just kind of slows down the whole process. You have to go through and read every comment. And we should have an index of all the topics covered in today's live stream pinned to the top of the comments field several hours after the live stream ends. So basically I'll take a dinner break, rewatch the live stream, and type up all the topics that were asked and discussed in today's live stream, and you could navigate directly to a particular topic. We also, if you wanted to search for over the 28,000 topics that have been covered in live streams, you could go to cubaseindex.com, and we want to thank Jan for creating that website. We also want to give special thanks to our two moderators that help out. They're not Steinberg employees, but we'll give a special thanks to Agent K and to Jazz Dude. Also, we'll give a special kudos to Jazz Dude for his work with the wonderful Cubase Nation Discord, which is an incredible resource of information for the Steinberg community. So once again, my name is Greg Undo. I work for Yamaha Corporation of America, which is the U.S. distributor of Steinberg products, and I'm the host. I'm presenting from outside of Washington, D.C. area in the United States, in Alexandria, Virginia. If you're watching this live, or even if you're watching it afterwards, please feel free to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. All right, so with that, we will go ahead and begin with questions. All right, so we see Peter from Montreal is going to be a little late. He's getting his snow tires installed, so it is autumn. So we have Club to Breathe checking in from Brazil. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so we have Jason Chinian from There Was a Time Production. Just says, just wishing everyone well, and he's from New York. Thanks for being on today. Great to see Jazz Dude on. Such a loyal attendee, and appreciate everything you do for the live streams. All right, we have Robbie Bowling from Dallas, Texas. Uno Memento from Finland. Jovanovic 3D. It's great to see you from Slovenia. All right, we have a question from Kama Beats. It says, hi to everybody. How to detect tempo of a sample? Greetings from Croatia. Waiting for Cubase 13. So if you have a sample, you know, what you could do, let's just listen to it. So I'm going to listen to this sample loop, and I'm just going to count the number of beats. So say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so we have 8 beats in this. So if I select this, we can go to your project menu, and we will go to Beat Calculator. And let's just say we're going to be 8 beats. And once we type in the number of beats, that will give us the tempo of the sample. So, and once we have that tempo kind of information embedded in the sample, we could put it into musical mode and have that automatically follow the tempo of the project. So if it's like a loop, something we could do is just, again, select it, listen to how many beats it is, go to your project menu to Beat Calculator, and at this point you could just come over here and determine how many beats it is, and that will tell you what the sample is. So I have that in musical mode now, so take that off. We'll see that that sample will now change. So give that a try. All right, great to see Val Yu from Vienna. have Stefan from Sweden. Sorry. Okay, so Value asks his question. I'm using a UR22C, and every time I click on the hardware writer in the F3 mixer view, Cubase crashes, unfortunately, every time. All my drivers are up to date, and so is the firmware. I'm crying. Okay, well, we'll try to make you not cry. But one thing to do is see if, when you go to your studio setup, one of the things that you can do is make sure that you have direct monitoring enabled. So if you go to your audio system and then see if you have direct monitoring enabled right there. Also, and see if you see the hardware for, if you have an audio track, let's try selecting one of the inputs. So we're going to come over here and let's go to our audio connections, and we'll just have an input. So I'll add, let's say I'm going to add a mono bus and make sure that we actually have the particular input set up for that. And then once you have the direct monitoring checked, see if you could right click and have your hardware settings visible for the track, but it may not be visible until it's actually routed to where there is a connection. So make sure that you have the input routed to this, and then you could probably see the hardware settings there. So see if you have it show up there, and that could get you the same access to the information as well. All right, so we have Jan from Cubase Index in Stockholm. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate all your work with Cubase Index. All right, we see Benny from Sweden. All right. All right, my chat field just jumped on me. Okay, so we see from Patrick, hi, are there any plans of introducing routing folders into future versions? So, we could think of folders as being kind of set up more for a visual aid here, because there's a lot of elements that could go into a particular folder that don't pass audio. But if you want to, let's clear my throat. But there is a macro that's kind of built in that will kind of get you the same area. And I have way more macros than other people, but you could say selected tracks to new folder and add group channels. I had these selected, so this will automatically put it into a folder. And now I'm just going to add my group, in which we can name. So now everything in that folder is automatically routed to the particular group. So go to edit to macros, and then you'll see selected tracks to new folder and add group channel. So all right, so Jason just says, hi Greg, hope you're well. So I'm doing great, thank you. All right, we see Rick Ballantyne on, and his question is, oh Greg, any news on the new update coming? So generally we don't announce any features until it's shipping. So as soon as it is shipping and available, we will do a very detailed walkthrough of everything. Otherwise it gets to be kind of a bad tease. It's kind of annoying for people to speculate on without having the ability to experience it. So all right, great to see Dallas LaRue from Las Vegas. We see Jan giving special thanks to Jazz Dude for the unofficial Cubase Nation Discord. All right, so we see question from Hunter 90531. Hello, I'm on Cubase 12 Pro, Windows 11. I'm an absolute beginner and I can't get audio to go through my Bluetooth earphones. How do I change audio output to my earphones? So generally, using Bluetooth headphones or earphones isn't the best solution because one, it's going to limit your sample rate to 44.1K, so you can't do 48K, you can't do 96K, and there's going to be a lot of latency. So what you need to do is to come over here, we could say on a Windows platform, you go to your audio system, you would say generic low latency driver, and I'm on a Mac, so it's a little different, but I'll just kind of switch over here to built-in audio. Select your built-in audio, go to your control panel, and here you'll see the options. So what you need to do is to select your Bluetooth headphones there, and realize that that could prevent you from, since your Bluetooth headphones, probably the microphone isn't going to be connected into the audio input, that you may have different timing issues, but it will impose latency. But again, go to your studio menu, to studio setup, go to your audio system on Windows, select generic low latency, click on the generic low latency, go to the control panel, and then route the audio output through the Windows sound driver to your Bluetooth headphones. But again, if you have wired headphones, it's going to be a much better experience for you. Just make sure I'm still routed here. Okay. And thanks for joining the live stream today. All right, so we see Rex Effect says, I have Cubase 12 Pro. When are they planning on updating the software? So I would say that we're pretty close to an update, but I can't officially say when. I would be under a non-disclosure agreement. And we see Michael's question, is Cubase 13 on the way? So, yep, it is. So I can't unfortunately tell you when, but as soon as it's out and available, we'll make sure to do a very detailed live stream right after it's out. But I think everyone will like new stuff that's coming. Okay, so we see from Vicente Amadeo, please, in your Dolby Atmos video, you showed us a way to export Dolby Mix, but you only used bed channels. I'm having a problem when the objects are not coming in the final WAV file. Okay, so let me open up that project. Okay, so I'm going to go to we'll just listen to this, and if you have headphones on, you may hear. Kind of hear the panning going around. All right, so I'm going to go to my ADM authoring. So I'm going to add the object here. Okay, so now listen to it. See, it's still kind of popping around. Okay, so all right, so now that we're here, let's come over to our bed, and we'll have that go to our stereo out. We'll export audio mix down. this to desktop. Okay, there's the file. And let me just switch over the audio player here to the same interface. So it seems like that's still kind of working as expected, but let me know if I did something differently than you're doing. All right, so Patrick, just see, hi Greg, I just wanted to follow up on if you forwarded my request about a project level save as feature that shares the same audio pool. I've asked about it 1 or 2 months ago. So I did share it, but I think if I remember correctly, it was you just wanted it to I did pass it along, but if I remember right, it was something like you wanted like any project you wanted a project that it had different audio files in it to delete references to other files, which I still think can be problematic if you're building up tracks. You want, if you changed a pool in one project, I don't think it should affect, personally, I don't think that, if you have one project revision open, you changed a pool, that it should automatically affect previous projects that may refer to a file that was deleted in a later version. So, but I did pass it along. All right, so we have the artist known as Love from New York, just saying, thank you, Greg, for everything. Please hit the like button. So, if you do learn a new tip or trick, make sure you hit the like button. All right, so we have Soren checking in from Sweden. All right, Mr. Fleskness from Sweden, thanks for joining us. All right, so we have a question from Club to Breathe, and my chat field just jumped on me. Okay, so Club to Breathe asks, MIDI, is there a way to edit the MIDI file at the project zone instead of the MIDI editor lower zone so I can edit it having an audio as a reference to visual cues? Yeah, so all you have to do is use the in-place editor. So let me just jump back to this project. Go ahead and close Apple Music here. Okay, so if I wanted to see this particular audio file and this MIDI file, so what you could do is if you hit Control or Command plus Shift and the letter I, that will open up the in-place editor, and now we could just edit the MIDI data directly on the project window, so we could just see your MIDI data here and line it up to audio. To close it, you could just kind of double click at the bottom. There's also, you could right click, and if you go to your track control settings, so right click here, go to track control settings, you could see the edit in place. So you may have to come over here for the selected track, go to edit in place and add. And once you do that, there's a little icon that will appear that will allow you to just edit that particular track in place. And again, if you hit Control or Command plus Shift plus the letter I, that way you could just do your MIDI editing. And if you wanted to zoom, we had this question on the last live stream, if you just go to the keyboard here, you'll see the cursor change to kind of like compass. And at that point, you could just hold the mouse down and drag it over to the left or right to kind of zoom in vertically. And the horizontal zoom will kind of be the same. And again, Control or Command plus Shift plus the letter I will open and close the editor. All right, so we see, is Cubase 13 coming soon, or will there be Cubase 12.5? So I think it's going to be labeled 13. I think they've kind of done away with the 0.5 in the model names. So, all right, so we have Pete Van Blockland just checking in from Amsterdam. We have Development of a Void just saying hello. Always wonderful to see Mark Rabin. And he says, hit the like button now before we forget. So, okay, so David Walker from Inverness, Scotland. Is there a way to make sure everything used in a project is actually saved in the project folder? So all the audio files can be saved if you go to your media menu, and you'll see this function for prepare archive. You could also open up the pool window, and if you have files that are just kind of in different locations, again, you could right click here and choose prepare archive. That will move all of the audio files into the audio folder within the project folder. If you have multiple files, multiple projects within the same project folder, what you could do at that point is come over to your file menu, back up project, choose a new folder, and what that will allow you to do is this will copy all of the files used in a particular project to the newly defined folder. So if you have one project per folder and maybe audio files dragged in from different projects, just do the prepare archive. If you're at the point, and I've seen many pro engineers, it's like, oh, I just put every single recording for this entire album into the same folder. At that point, that's when the backup project would be a better solution. Okay, so we have development of a void asks, question, is there a way to change the default size for a VST window when first loading it? It depends. For like a VST instrument, it could depend upon the instrument itself. Some instruments you can expand and change the size. Many plugins, many third-party plugins will be kind of a fixed size. So it depends if the plugin itself is set up that way, and when we open up that plugin again, the size can automatically be scaled to what the previous size was. So not all plugins have that ability, but a lot of times it's going to be determined by the plugin itself whether it can be resized and saved to default states of zooming and what particular parameters are visible and accessible. All right, so we see Mark Rabin's dog Stella says hi, and woof. We always like when Stella joins us as well. We just feel bad that Stella can't hit the like button with her paw. So, all right, so we see Michael Teams from Weatherford, Texas. He's going to be here for a bit, and he has a project due. All right, we're glad he could join us. All right, and we have Richard Michael joining us from Wales. Thanks for being on the live stream today. Okay, so Alex Green asks, "Hi Greg, please can you help? All I need to store my MIDI parts in the media bay by drag and drop. I have projects with hundreds of parts, and I simply need a way to store ideas as MIDI parts." All right, so all you have to do is come over and you could have what we call MIDI loops. So if they're going to virtual instruments, what you could do is just come over and we'll say export a MIDI loop. All right, we'll give it a name. Okay. So let's call it Alex Green. Okay, so I've now come over and we have this in Media Bay. So let's come over, go to Media. We'll go to let's see, we go to presets. We will go to, let's see if it's, all right, so we'll just come over to all right, so here we're going to say, let's go to user content and go to MIDI loops. So here we'll just see Alex Green, that's the MIDI loop that we just made, and I could drag it over and it will load up the particular instrument for us and the event. So you have to kind of, if you want to be able to access each individual part, you could just save it and export it as a MIDI loop. One other method that you might, so that will allow you to drag it from the media bay. If you wanted to import like an entire track, you could go to import tracks from project, select a particular project, and then once you're here, you could say, okay, I really need this particular MIDI loop. I need this MIDI instrument track. So I could just come over here and say, okay, I want the bass part, and hit OK. And now we could just have the bass part imported as well. But if you wanted like each individual part to be draggable over, just simply select it, then open up or go to your file menu to export MIDI loop. And if it's, you could also export it as MIDI files, but MIDI files would generally contain all the different events within the project and not just an individual part. Okay, so Jason asks, hi Greg, how do I get the fader channels to replicate the color of the parts? Apologies if you've covered this already. So no apologies for asking questions that may have been asked before. Keeps me employed. But it's, let's say if we're in our mix console here, and we want to see kind of the channel colors replicated, we go to your preferences. Under user interface, we'll see track and mix console channel colors, and it probably defaults to looking like this. So if you say mix console channels, at that point, check that, hit apply, and OK. And now you could have the colors from the channels automatically conveyed to the mixer channels. All right, so we have WOP rules or WAP rules. Hello, this is my first live stream to tune into. Looking forward to learning. Well, thanks for joining us today, and we hope to see you on many future live streams. And feel free to ask any questions. Okay, so we have Edward James checking in from Akron, Ohio. Thanks for being on. All right, so we see, hi Greg and all, this is Martin from Germany. I'm thinking about purchasing a Steinberg AXR4 interface because of all of its benefits. So yeah, that's what I use an AXR4U and for my audio interface in my studio. So sounds wonderful. All right, so we see from Michael Teams, are you doing his ice cream distribution very diligently? He has to get it all in his first 2 hours. All right, so we see from a Hunter 90531, just says thank you very much. All right, Jason from New York asks, hi Greg, can I label each audio MIDI part on the track differently? And if so, how do I do this? Again, apologies if you covered this. All right, so no worries. So if you want to, you could just come over here and let's give the event a name. So if I come and we just give it a name right here, you could just type in any name that you want. So just kind of select the event, and from the info line up here up top, just give it whatever you want for the name, type it in, and then each event on the track can have independent names as needed. All right, so we see question, sorry, but how to detect the tempo of a vocal? Sometimes, vocals may not give you enough information to do an accurate tempo detection, but let's say I'll come over, we'll just do just a vocal here. With audio file that has like some transients, but we could come here, let's go to our project menu, and we could do, we'll select tempo detection. So we have the vocal selected here. We'll do an analysis of it. And we see, because sometimes the vocal is not going to kind of give you an accurate representation of what's, of the rhythmic context. What did you say? You wished it. But, one of the things that you could also do if you just have a vocal is, just come over and let's say while you're, I'm just going to add a MIDI track here. And I'm just going to, like, as we listen to the vocal, I'm going to record MIDI data here. So just rewind a little bit. What did you say? I'll just turn off the existing click. So, all right. So when just go ahead and kind of. What did you say? So I'm just gonna hitting the beats. You wished it all away, and I'm left here for 1,000 years and a day. You were the party, the baby. So at that point, what we do, we've recorded we tapped along and done, just get rid of that one long note. So we basically tapped along to the tempo, and then if we go to your MIDI menu, you could just choose from your MIDI functions, merge tempo from tapping. You could say began at the first bar, I was tapping quarter notes, and then you could just do tempo maps like that. But sometimes you're always at, vocals are hard to figure out the exact tempo. You may have to just kind of listen to it and tap along and kind of get a sense of what the tempo is of the vocal file. All right, so we see Michael Teams is granted Mark Rabin 1 gallon of Scoops Black Diamond ice cream. All right, Michael Teams wants everyone to whack the button. All right, so we see a question. I'm new to Cubase after a long time editing in Pro Tools. Could you demonstrate editing cut events together, changing up the point where they meet? The overlapping events thing confuses me. All right, so let's say we have we have different events here. All right, so if I want to select that event, so if we use kind of like the range tool, we could just double click on the event with the range tool. And then once we have the arrange tool, I could come over here and say, okay, I want to crop, that event. I could also just come over, say, okay, with this particular range. So let's say even if I don't have it cut, I'm just going to select the range, go to edit. So if I just want to come here and we could say, okay, I just want to, move the particular edit over. So if I just hit the delete key, we could keep the same amount of space with the range tool. And you could have this selected, so the object selection tool when you're at the bottom, the range tool when you're at the top. So if I wanted to move this data over to the left to fill in that space, you can just go to edit, to range, and you can just say, okay, let's just delete time, and that will just move over the particular events. So try using the range tool, and then at this point you could just do the functions. And if you wanted to just use that with a keyboard shortcut, I think it's just Command Shift X or Control Shift X. And then you could just get rid of the specified range. So let me know if that's helpful for you. All right, so you see value says that he tried the hardware. It's, that's still not working for him. So, when you download the driver, there's kind of like, the software for the UR22C, there's kind of like 3 different components. So try the extension and see if that works. And then I see also when I select direct monitoring, I can't monitor when monitoring is enabled on the track. I just don't hear anything then. Yeah, so try to just sometimes if you just if you reinstall a driver, it may do that. But if you look in the download for the driver, try reinstalling the extension as well. So I think that's how it works if you're on Windows. All right. Okay, so we have Richard Michael asks, hi Greg, can you demonstrate how to automate and reduce the reverb in a section of a vocal track and then increase the reverb back up using reverb as an insert effect, please? Thank you. Okay, so I will take this. I probably have the reverb on this as a send. I'm going to turn that off, and let's just go to, we'll put it on, I'll just do a we'll do reverence here. Okay, so I want to just take the amount here, so let's say all right, so I'm just going to come here. Now I'm uninvited. All right, so let's say I'm on the outside looking in. You put the clothes. All right, so I want to automate this reverb change, and we're on an insert. All right, so what I'm going to do, I just have this parameter of the mix. So, and we're going to automate this. I'm going to click on the plugin itself, and we're going to click on the W button. So as we start playing, let's say from here. You were the party, the big event. I was your everything.
I'm on the outside looking in. You put the close side up on your heart.
So now we'll just rewind and everything I just did.
You were the party, the big event.
You just watch this parameter here.
Everything. Now I'm uninvited. I'm on the outside looking in. You put the close side up on your
And if you want to adjust,
all the lights went out and it got dark. Where do I go from here?
so just automated a different parameter. So everything we just did.
Lights went out and it got dark. Where do I go from here? Where do I go from here? Where do I go from here?
So give that a try. And I think that, so just open up the insert plugin. You could adjust like the mix level. So that's the balance between dry and affected signal, and or just other parameters, and just move that, and automate on the plugin itself. And then it will just kind of show up here in the lanes for you. Okay, wonderful to see Capped Energy Music from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania area. Wishing everyone a happy Friday the 13th. All right, so we have Parabot 2 checking in from Australia. Thanks for being online. Realize it's probably 3:43 in the morning, so glad you can make it today. Always great to have an Australian presence. All right, so we have a question, 44.1K versus 48K. Always been uncertain which I should use. What are the advantages of 44.1K sample rate? So, 44.1 is the sample rate that's used on CDs. Generally, video is going to be 48K. A lot of times people may not be producing music for audio CDs anymore. So people may use other sample rates, and if you wanted it to be in video or to accompany video, 48K is a better sample rate, is a more common sample rate for video. Obviously, people can convert to sample rate. I would say that if your audio doesn't, if you have problems with the quality of your audio, it's probably not going to be a sample rate issue. So either will work fine. And, some people will say, oh, it has to be a 48K. And I know, we had someone who wanted me to check with Zed's, the DJ producer, his team, as to what sample rate they use. And, he's doing everything at 44.1. Or if I was doing something like an Alison Krauss record, I would do higher sample rates, but we just do everything at 44.1. So either one would work. Just make sure that, that you stay consistent within a project for the sample rate. All right, Michael Teams has granted my family and myself 1 gallon of fresh strawberry ice cream. That's always my favorite ice cream flavor. Thank you, Michael. It's very generous. My son will love it as well. All right, so we just see, says, I'm new to Cubase after a long time. Could you please demonstrate editing different events together on the same track, changing up the point where they meet and such? So I think we may have covered that already, so let me know if you need me to, if that's what you want to see. Okay, so we see from Michael Teams, sorry, and then my chat field just jumped. Okay, so we see Michael Teams asks, Greg, still having trouble getting Groove Agent to go to the track, perhaps one more time. Please show how this is done. Okay. Okay, so Groove Agent has basically two different. Groove Agent SE has a couple different modes. One will be kind of an acoustic drummer, and one would be basically like an MPC drum machine paradigm. So let's say if I have a project playing here, so we could have like our acoustic agent, and this will give us like an acoustic drum sound, and we have pads, so we have pads that will trigger different sounds and pads that will trigger patterns. So we could have different patterns. These could include intros, like verse, chorus, bridge, endings, as well as fills. And we could change these patterns. So these kind of orangish colored patterns, we could now come over here, and these could have 16 levels of complexity or 16 levels of dynamics. Now, if we have this set to follow transport as we hit play, it's just going to automatically synchronize with the Cubase transport. And I could do stuff also where we say, okay, every 4 measures play a random drum fill, and I want to set the auto complexity so that every bar will play 1 or 2 levels of complexity higher or lower. And if I wanted to take this pattern, now, so basically this could be its own subsequencer within Cubase, but if I wanted to drag this particular pattern out to the project, now I would just take it and drag from a pattern pad right to the project window, and we can see the track that it will go to when we, at this point, you see this little blue line on the white line here. And now I could just take these different patterns, say now I want to fill, and let's end it. So now as we listen to it, so we'll have, let's say, fill, and an ending. So that's kind of the basics of how to kind of get patterns in. So if you have a beat agent kit, it would be, instead of, having the view of a kind of an acoustic drum kit, you would just kind of have this, but the pattern behavior would be the same. So I can just drag these patterns right to the particular track. So let me know if that's helpful for you, Michael. All right. All right, so we see Captain Energy Music is a big fan of the Halloween season with spooky fall vibes. Is looking for pumpkin ice cream, so you have to go to Trader Joe's. All right. All right, so we see what would be a reason that the clip wouldn't snap to a 30-second note even if you have the grid snap and set to use quantize. Okay, so so I'm not sure if you're in a particular MIDI. So let's say if we're in a MIDI editor, let me just switch this. Okay, so let's say I have just a note here. Okay, so, and I'm going to set my quantize set to 30-second note. All right, so so let's say we have so as I move this, we can see that, you know, it's just snapping directly to the 30-second note pulse. If I switch this to 16th notes, now I could get 4 divisions within the beat that it's snapping to. So, you know, one thing also is, you know, make sure that you have snap turned on. So if you don't have snap turned on, and that's just the letter J, that you could just freely place anything that you want. But with snap turned on here, and you know, you can make sure that you have, you know, just that. And now we could just say, okay, I want this to be 30-second notes. And now it's snapping to 30-second notes. But, you know, if it's on the project window, you know, your events may also be, so let's say, there's also, so if you said you had use quantize here, so if I wanted to just, I can see that snapping to 30-second notes here. There is an adapt to zoom, which could change the snap value based on the zoom, but also just make sure that you have the snap turned on, or J, and then at that point you can say, as we use our quantize, which is set to 30-second notes, that we could now come over and it's just going to snap directly to the events to 30-second notes. So let me know if I did something differently in you, but it seems like it's working as expected. All right, so you see Gothic Melancholy, just says Cubase 13. So yeah, as soon as it's out, we will, you know, I can't really talk about it until it's publicly announced. So, all right, so we have Frederick checking in from Cork, Ireland. All right, so we have Rob from Tarpon Springs, Florida. Says, when opening a project from several years ago, I sometimes get a message missing MIDI import. Is there a way to remedy this recurring message? So it could be that you're maybe using a MIDI controller or a MIDI controlled device, you know, maybe like, you know, even like a little fader unit of some kind, like a Korg Nano control. So maybe that project is still referencing that MIDI input port, and if it doesn't see that MIDI input port, that it will show you that message. I think that you have the option to change the MIDI input port, but you can also just make sure that you know, if you want it to set the particular MIDI input port here, but you know, often it's just kind of saying, the last time this project was open, we had this for, you know, we had this device for a MIDI input. We don't see that device. Do you want to select a different device for the MIDI input port? It may not be as critical if you're kind of opening up a project and maybe you're not re-recording, then it's probably not as critical, but it allows you to establish a new device in lieu of the missing device whose connection was referenced in the project. All right, Parabot2 asks, hi Greg, I'm going to upgrade my music, my main hard drive. What's the best way to reinstall Cubase 12 Pro? Is there a specific order to go about it? Do I need to deactivate in the manager first? So just as a safety, if you're swapping out the system drive, I would go to the Cubase activation manager and deactivate before doing that. So just go through your Steinberg license activations and just deactivate it. And that way, before you do it, you could do it afterwards. It's a little more of a nuisance. You could do it remotely, but I would just do it before swapping out the hard drive. And then when you log in again, just simply activate it and with the new hard drive connected. So I would deactivate it before replacing a system hard drive. All right, Frederick from Ireland asks, what's the best way in Windows to create projects from the hub without having to change location afterwards? All right, so we see, so when we have our hub, we come over here and you'll see different settings. So I think in Cubase 11, it used to be a default location, but in Cubase 11 and 12, this actually allowed you to prompt for project location. So if I'm starting a new project, and I think the great rule of thumb is that each project has its own folder. And that way, like, file management is so much easier once you do that. So, every time you start a new project, think of putting it into a new folder. Now, you could have folders, like if you're doing an album with 12 songs on it, 12 projects, you could put I would still have each project or each song into its own unique folder, but maybe within another folder for the album. But once you do this, you'll see the prompt for project location. A lot of people will come over here and say create empty, and they just at this point just select the same file, the same folder here. So at this stage, instead of kind of blowing through it really quickly, hitting your enter or return key, just choose to make a new folder. So we'll say, okay, I want to have my project. I want it to be in this folder. Let's make a new folder. I'll give it today's date because I'm horribly uncreative with folders. So I'll say, okay, this is the date. So now every time I record an audio file, when I go to save a project, it's all going to be in that newly defined folder that we created. So once you do the new project, just be very aware and kind of cognizant of that you're going to prompt for the project location at this stage, define a new folder, and then that's 90% of people's project management problems with media just solved right there. All right, so we have Asa Wiggins just saying hello from Nashville. So thanks for being on today. We're glad that you're on the live stream. All right, so we see from Alex Green, thanks, Greg. The MIDI loops workflow is somewhat more convoluted than I wanted. Is there a way to simply drag and drop the MIDI parts? So realize that when you drag and drop the MIDI parts, it may not automatically know the instrument that you're doing, and if you have 100 MIDI parts named bass or drums, that each one will have to have a unique name if you want to be able to uniquely kind of drag and drop them out. So if you want the flexibility on the back end, you have to put a little effort on the front side to catalog and name and think of different locations. All All right, so a question from Rick Valentine. Do you know if Yamaha will ever put out a breath controller again? I wonder if they had like a little half rack space tone module years ago that may still be available, Yamaha VL70M. It used to be on the Motif, I think they were like the Motif ES. You had the option for a breath controller card, like an expansion card. And I think after a while they could look at the sales and say, okay, this isn't selling as many units to justify manufacturing it, that it may have kind of not be implemented into future ones, but there may still be, check to see. I'll just do a quick look here. I think it was a VL70M unit. I'll just Google it on my monitoring computer here real quick and see if that is still available. I'm not always kind of privy to what's going on in the synthesizer side because it's a different division, and I'm in the pro audio side. Yeah, it may be discontinued, but there's a number of them on eBay. Let's just see. I'll just look to see if it's. Yeah, it's no longer available. I'll kind of mention it to the team and see if they know of any. If there's any plans. Obviously they just released a new Montage M this week. I don't think that has breath control, but I haven't looked. But I'll make sure to mention it, Rick. All right. All right, so we have Mike DeGorge, just checking in from Tampa. All right, so we see Mark Rabin has given Michael Teams a digital grandfather clock gift. All right, so you see Value asks, when editing, let's say vocals in Very Audio, how can I insert a MIDI melody from, let's say, a synth? So there's no way to insert the melody, but what you can do is, let's come over here. I'll look at this. So let's say we're in Very Audio. All right, something that's handy is that you could choose a MIDI reference. So at this point, you could just say, you could see the MIDI tracks in the back, but it's not intended to, take a melody because the rhythms may be totally different. If there's no word, Very Audio isn't going to add vocal parts. I mean, you could do it with sampler tracks, so if you wanted to come over and let's just drag, something, but it's not going to, if there's no actual parts of, let's say you have a da 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 da, but in MIDI, but you just have one held note, it's not going to be able to replicate that. But you could, if we have, let's say, the sampler control, and we drag this in, and I guess Cubase didn't like that. Just reopen here real quick. Sorry about that. But just taking something into the sampler track, and then you could take just a vocal file and then play it and kind of replicate it in MIDI, but it's not going, you could see the MIDI as a reference to do editing against and to kind of check pitches, but it's not necessarily going to create vocal parts that, you know, that aren't really there to start with. So again, it's more of a visual reference. All right, let's go to next question. All right, so we see from Sydney Thurston asks, I'm having a problem with Cubase not scanning my VST3 folder. Is there a fix for this? I've uninstalled Cubase a few times. Help, I want to use my Cubase. So, you know, the one thing to do is if we go into, you know, so Cubase will automatically look into the VST3 folder, and it's a fixed location that Cubase goes into. So I'm not sure if so when we go to, let's say, your studio menu to VST plugin manager, you know, if you come here, so you go to, you can have the effects or instrument tracks. So if you go to your effects, you'll see this. This will automatically rescan all of the folders, so anything that's in the VST effects, and it will show you if you have this. Make sure that it's not in the black or the block list. So these are plugins that are blocked because they could cause system instability. So it could be recognized and maybe it's showing up in the block list. So check that and just see if it's in the block list. But, you know, when Cubase is starting up, if it's in that folder, it looks in the VST3 folder. If it's a VST2 and you think maybe it's a VST3, you might have to click on the settings here and just add the path where the VST2 plugins are installed. And then again, just this little icon in the VST plugin manager, you just now come right here and rescan, and that will refresh. So if you could let us know like which plugins maybe aren't showing up, and realize that, you know, if you're on like an Apple, if you're running an Apple Silicon, that some plugins, you know, that are VST2 won't show up. Some may just go into the block list. All right. All right, reading through different questions. Okay, so we have a question from Ness. Hi, Greg. If I drag a drum pattern from Easy Drums into Cubase and I want to use the Modi X Plus, the drum mapping doesn't always make sense. Is there a solution for it? Thanks. Okay, so Ray said, you know, drum mappings from one device may not make sense in another device when you switch. So like, you know, what's a tom in one device, maybe a percussion sound on the same MIDI note to another device. If you run into that, what you could do is, let's say we add let's say we have a drum track here. So I'm going to say, let's just go to an instrument track, and let's say, okay, I wanted to come over here to we'll just go to like a Hallian Sonic, and let's say we just had a drum kit here. So this will be maybe similar to what we're going to do. All right, so we have a drum kit. All right, so what you could do is go into the drum map, and so we have the track selected here, and where you see no drum map, go to drum map setup, and you could just create a new map. Okay, and then once you have the new map, all right, so we'll just say this is Easy Drum to Mode DX. make sure I'm on the keyboard's on the right computer. Okay. Okay, so now I'm going to just add an event here. And we go to, let's say, I'm going to select the drum map. And let's say this is our Easy Drums to Modi X. So now we could double click. As we extend this line over, and you may have to come over here and just kind of change all of the MIDI channels if necessary. But you have what we call I note and O note. So let's say this is like your kick drum. So I come here, let's say, okay, we have a kick drum here, and let's say snare there. But these are playing the wrong sounds. So what you could do is just simply select, like, you know, the sound that is playing wrong and go to the O note and just remap that particular note. So once you're here, you could just choose to remap that particular note, and you could do this within the drum map editor as well. So once we are in the drum map editor, you know, we could, so let's say if we just kind of go here to our drum map setup, you could choose to have these all remapped here. So you can say, okay, C1, you know, is, so just come and, so C1 should be triggering, you know, D sharp 1, etc. So you could remap the input note to the output note either in the drum map, or if you just have the drum editor, then you could, you know, and you don't have to do it for every single one, but you go, okay, this is playing the wrong sound. So while it plays, you could just select it and say, okay, this needs to, oh, yeah, now that it's a hi-hat part. And you could just change and remap the output notes to go to the correct pitch, to the correct sample sound that's being triggered from the Modi X. All right, so we see Mark Rabin says he likes the Groove Agent tutorials. They help me. So he hit the like button. So good advice. All right, so you see about the Atmos question, still didn't work. Your audio track there is set as bed, and my problem when I have some tracks as objects, when I export, they're not playing through the final stereo file. Only my bed channels could be control room. Yeah, make sure that you have the, you know, the ambient decoder, you know, in the control room, and that it's in your headphones, and you have the preview going through your headphones. All right, we see Michael Team says, thanks, Greg. I think that's all my problem, drag from the pattern pads. Okay, so we see from Asa Wiggins, says, back on the topic of editing and overlapping events, I was more referring to how the behavior of the swipe handles work when there are audio events that overlap each other. Okay, so let's take a look. Thanks for the clarification on that. Okay, so all right, so say we have these events that are overlapping each other. So, you know, once you come here, we could, I'll just take my snap off here for, so we could see, like, you know, when I'm here that we could edit like the start and end of particular events. So if we want to come here, so as these are overlapping, we could just, so let's say, okay, now we have this as our master section that we could have those overlap. There's also just, if you go to preferences to editing, there's the delete overlaps function. So now if I have these two events, I could just have those automatically delete the events, and now we could just roll back to have the particular events that were overlapped, so that as events are overlapped, that those are automatically deleted. Or we could just choose to have these overlap. So let's say I have this event here, and that, I'll just turn off the preference, delete overlaps. So if I want, this one to play, we could just, go to the bottom center area of the clip, and you could say, remove overlaps if you want, if you wanted to do that, or, this is overlapping on top, or you could have this. So whatever one is kind of currently selected, that could be the event that's playing on the same track. All right, so we see, hi Greg, is from Fernando. Hi Greg, is there a way to auto-select the outputs in use under Groove Agent in order to have separate outputs as to treat every percussion element recorded by mic and not having to go one by one? Thanks. So I think let's go ahead and take a look at it, see if there's... So I think, it's set up to go one by one because you may not want to, and because it's often set up for rendering, and you may not want to necessarily have, a bunch of empty tracks. But let's see if we could. All right, so let's say if I come here, and so I think that we might have to do this manually, but let's see if we could save it maybe as a preset. So let's say so if you wanted to have the routing set up once, if you click here, you could save that as a preset, so that way, so right now if I switch these all back to kit mix, we'll just say kit mix here. So now these are all kind of one to set to master, but I come here, we say multi-out, and then our output configurations are restored. So let me know if that will help. All right, always wonderful to see Nick from Essex in the UK on. He's all ready for the weekend and just hit the like button. All right, so we see Ted Springman. Hi, Greg. Are you at liberty to say if other Steinberg apps will upgrade at the same time as Cubase? So generally we don't, like there may be other programs, like Nuendo generally comes a bit after Cubase because there's more features. But we try not to do like multiple releases at once. It's just kind of confusing to the market, but usually the Nuendo release for the last 3 versions has been within several weeks after the Cubase release. In years past it was, very delayed in comparison. But I think, we won't release Cubase and Nuendo on the same day would be my guess. But let me know if you're talking other apps as well. All right, and we see Stella is there and wagging, so that's good. Always want Stella to be happy during the live streams. All right, wonderful to see Graham Witcher on, and he has just a quick short visit. He has a big family birthday weekend, so have a wonderful celebration with your family. Glad that you could make it. Graham's in Royal Wooten Bassett. All right, Asa Wiggins, what is a shortcut to widen and narrow faders in the mix console? So it's just going to be the same as zooming. So on our project window, it's going to be G and H. We have the mix console window selected, G and H. So that's all you have to do. So depending which window you're in, which is the active window, which you can see by this white outline, that's what is being updated. All right, so we see from Bowie Vuitton, do you have a full Cubase, a full course on Cubase available anywhere? So there are different companies that do training. Berkeley College of Music does it. There are other schools. There are, online resources. If you watch a lot of these live streams, you could probably get a lot of information out of it without necessarily doing a course. And if you watch all the live streams here, there's 28,000 plus questions that have been covered. And obviously check out the Cubase Nation Discord, and it's free. See, Mark Rabin's happy. Ice creams and doggies and Cubase. Woohoo! Right. All right, Jazzy Lumel asks, blessings, Greg. I would like to know, how does any of the Yamaha digital mixers work as an interface with Cubase? If so, can I still use my current interface in conjunction with the mixer? Please advise. So basically, for the most part, you can have one audio interface, whether it's your audio interface or the mixer. So most of the Yamaha mixers now will pass audio. If you have a DM3S, that's the newest, or like one of the new interfaces that's attractive to Cubase users, that's going to allow you to there's a Dante version and a USB version. They will pass multi-channel audio over USB or Dante depending which version you have. If you have a Yamaha TF console, they would use USB to do up to 32 tracks. So if you have a TF1, that would give you 16, a TF3, 24, TF5 would be 32 tracks of audio over the USB. So you could do multi-track production that way. The other, like a DM7, a CLQL, Rivage, those consoles, you could utilize Dante over Ethernet. and you could get a Dante virtual sound card to be able to pass all of the audio from there. I'm using an AGO 8, which is kind of like a live streaming mixer. That's what my voice and the Cubase audio is going through. You could use that as well, but basically, you could connect your interface into the mixer, but having the interface in the mixer, generally most of the times the two clocks in the interfaces won't synchronize, and your audio will be out of time, which is a bad thing. All right. See, Jazz Dude just says, never in history it was that easy to learn a professional DAW. You should have lived 30 years ago. It's 1,000 times more complicated, and all the generation back then handed it to make great records. So it's a great point. I think just in general, it's just super easy to learn stuff now with so many resources that weren't available. I can remember, starting bass like 40 years ago, and, there wasn't, like you couldn't just, I want to learn this song. I remember having to call the radio station and request a song so I could put it on cassette and listen to it over and over again. Now you could just watch someone teach you how to play the bass part in a matter of seconds just with a YouTube search. So, but yeah, there's amazing educational resources out. All right, so we see Cubase X just saying, evening, Greg. Thanks for another great hangout. So it's wonderful to have you on. All right, so Patrick Emanuel A asks, how to draw automation and shrink it to make more weird modulations. All right, so let's come over. So let's say we have automation here. Okay, so if you wanted to take your automation here, so let's say so if we take the automation here, we could do all sorts of different curves. So if we wanted to take to expand the automation, because so we kind of adjusted vertically this way. We could also tilt your modulation, and then if you have this selected as like a range, we could also just come here and duplicate the range. And let's see if we could maybe do something on the horizontal axis here. I'm not sure if we could do it in a project logical editor. I know we could increase and decrease automation, but let's see if we can do something a little more creative with it. Okay, so if we just want to take the, so let's say I wanted to take this, this modulation here, and I just wanted to divide it by 2. So we could say transform automation, and we'll say position divide by, divide by 2. So I could just come here and we could divide the automation time in half, but you could also just kind of put in a random 3.148 whatever and divide by that. There's also, so if you wanted to half time, or even now, let's see if we adjust, so we could say take multiply by 0.874. So if you want to just introduce some kind of random elements, so we could cut it in half and shrink it down as well. A lot of people don't miss out on, so using those tools in the project logical editor. You could also just a lot of people miss these tools. So let's say, if you go to the draw tool, a lot of people just look at it as a line tool, so we could draw in kind of straight lines. But if you want to draw in different envelopes, we could say, okay, I just want to do my parabola. And if we want to change the frequency of the parabola, we could just, hold down different modifier keys. So we could say, okay, now I just want to change the slope of that. And if I now want to take all of this automation and, make it halftime, and let's say I want to do sine wave here. So as we go to enter in different automation points, I could just drag across. So we can see kind of the frequency here. And if I hold down the control or command key, we could adjust the frequency. So if I want to take this as an envelope and be able to, let's select all of our automation points. Let's go back to our project logical editor. And at this point, we could just say, I want to multiply by 2 and, we can say let's multiply by 2 and I want to just change it, and you could just try kind of just, different random envelopes. And you could also just set relative random values to position, or the trim is going to be kind of fixed values. But if you wanted to now come over and let's take like the selected automation, you could just shift double click on the first automation event to select all of them. But we could just take, even just relative random values for position as well. So at this point, we could just remove that, and you could choose to do all sorts of very creative things for coming up with different envelopes as well. So let me know if that works for you, Patrick. All right, so we see from Mark Rabin, who asks, when working in folders and you want edits to affect all tracks in folder, and it throws a warning when I select the equals on tracks folder, best way to align. Okay, so let me just open up a different project here. Okay, so I have all these. So I've come over here and I've done group editing. Okay, so you just see when working in folders and you want edits to affect all tracks in folders, and it throws a warning when I select the equals on tracks in folder, best way to align. So you may get a warning if like these files are different lengths. So, if it's kind of in the ballpark, you're going to be okay. But sometimes you may get a message saying, some of the tracks are different lengths. So, for the most part, you could ignore that. But, ideally, like if you're doing a lot of, group editing where it's like, okay, I want to take this, I want to move this, let's do a fade out and a fade in and truncate the end of all these. So these are all kind of working as the same, and this feature for like doing aligning and stuff is often, would ideally for it to work in an optimum manner, you'd want the lengths to be identical, so that way everything is kind of treated in the same manner. So, but if it's like a little bit off at the end, you'll be fine with that. Okay, so we see from Patrick Emanuel A. From India, is there a way to switch more tracks from stereo balance panner to stereo combined panner Q-Link, or I need to manually go and change every single tracks. It's around 100. All right, so let's come over here. I'll just do new project and let's add some stereo tracks. Okay, so they're all stereo. Okay, so I'm gonna let's try Q-Link. All right, so activate Q-Link and let's see if we can put them all on the combined panner. So it doesn't seem to apply to the Q-Link. And let me just, one thing that you can do, let's try this. There is a preference. So let's take a look, and be under, you could change the default stereo panner mode. So let's say we have these set to balanced panner. So I'm going to switch this to stereo combined panner. So it might be, so now if I added new tracks, these would all be, so you could add the new tracks, but I think you might have to go through and just change it one at a time. I'll bring that to their attention so that, you know, once you, so that it could work under quick link. That would make sense. Sorry about that. All right, so we see Mark Rabin just saying, all right, in the above question, do I need to align with the align tool, or is there some other magic way? Thanks in advance. So if you're, let's say if, just close this out. You know, once the, let's say these aren't group, so if we just enable like the phase warp, you know, and so, and if we wanted to do kind of alignment where we're using kind of free warping, so let's say if I come over here and we just put on free warp, and I want to put on, I'll just kind of zoom in here, and we'll put our warp markers down, and this, when we just kind of come over here, you know, and once we have this, then all of those can be, you know, once we have the phase coherent warping, at that point you could just move all of the different files like that. So I would say if you have like one or two hits that are out, then that's a very good way to do it. If you have multiple, you know, if it's just a really sloppy drum performance, then I would maybe take the quantizing approach to it. Always great to see Tiago from Brazil. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we see from Mike to George, is it possible to remap my Alesis Turbo Mesh Kit pads? So, you know, if you wanted to remap to play like a particular instrument inside of, you know, so you could always remap from the pads themselves, but if you are doing it in conjunction with like Groove Agent, So let's add an instrument track here. And you want it to remap like so it could be down to the instrument level. You could do like the same technique we did for remapping the drum editor from the easy drums to Modi X, but let's come over here to Groove Agent SE, and if we have a particular kit loaded up here, we just don't have that. All right, so at this point you see this little, so let's say you're hitting the pad and it's not going to the snare drum that you want. So at this point you see this little icon here, the use hardware controller mapping. And then once you have this activated, you could right click on a pad and just say trigger notes, or you could just say edit learn trigger note. So now as soon as you hit the pad, it would automatically assign that particular note to that pad. So once you activate the use hardware mapping, at that point just right click, edit, learn MIDI trigger note, hit the pad, and that MIDI note will be reassigned to play this particular instrument pad sound. All right, so we see from Asa Wiggins, does that totally answer my question? Thank you. Delete overlaps will be my new best friend in preferences. All right, so we have Panos checking in, just asking how everyone is doing. Thanks for joining us today. Okay, so Patrick asks, I have a chord progression for 3 minutes. It's all major and minor ninth chords. I need to select all the ninth note to do modulations. I tried in MIDI Logical Editor. It's not working. Can you show how to do it? It would be appreciated. All right. Okay, so let me just... All right, so let me add some ninth chords here. Okay, so, all right, just going to reread the question here real quick. All right, so way to switch. Okay, need to select all the ninth notes to do modulation. All right, so let's see. I think if we just select these particular chords, let's see if we could change them all at once. So it looks like they're still kind of independent entities. So you might just have to manually, double click. And as we, if you just have the chords selected, you could say, okay, I want to take my flat ninth, hit the left and right arrow key, and manually set it up to modulate. But let's see if we can do it maybe in the Project Logical editor. If there's a way, I don't think it really does chord track data. But okay, so it's, so we could select chords. We could select chords. Let's see if we could do like with the name. Yeah, so I don't think, yeah, let me try just one other thing here. So I think you might have to select the chords manually and do it one by one. Yeah, we could change kind of it looks like the chords are really intended to function independently, but I'll mention that to see if maybe they could add like a shift behavior to do that. But I think you could navigate pretty quickly with the open chord, and just while the edit window is open, just using the left and right arrow keys, that you could change a number of chords quickly in just a matter of a couple of seconds. All right, so we see Tiago says, any news about the basic FX suite licensing? So I haven't heard anything back, but I'll kind of send the question one more time, see if we get clarification. All right. So we see from Atacan, ask, hello dear Greg, is there a possibility that folders in the pool can be colorized as a feature? Sorry, when. As a feature in the new version. So I think that probably most features in the new version are already kind of at feature lock. But I'll make sure to kind of mention that as something you're looking for. So if you wanted to put these into folders, that you could colorize the folders. So, but I wouldn't anticipate it probably in the next version. So just kind of a heads up with that. But I'll make sure to mention it as a feature request. All right, wonderful to see JVI, and he's like number 74. So if you hit the like button, you don't have to apologize for being late. So we're not in 6th grade. Okay, so we see from Patrick Manuel A. Greg, is it a bug? I don't know. It's a E double sus chord, like E, F sharp, A, B. When I tried to select the 5th interval of all the chords on the MIDI logical editor, it worked with the other chord, but it's not working with double sus chords. Okay, so let's take a look, see if we have. I'll just add that chord. Okay, so let me just E, F sharp, A, B. Okay, so when I play that chord, this is what it's kind of showing as. So, so if this is kind of the chord, and we could obviously change the spelling of it, but that's just think of the chord spelling for that. So we did E, F sharp, A, B. All right, and that's what it's kind of showing us for. All right, so I'll just have this, I'll just write in the notes here real quick. Okay, so if you wanted to select okay, so let's say let's get to our MIDI logical editor. And we'll choose to select type is equal to note, and let's say context variable is going to be equal to let's see which one would be the best one. Right, so if I have that, all right, so you might have to select the minor third. All right, so you might want to play around with, just out of curiosity, like if you go, because when that's, I'm not sure how the chord is entered. Like if we just do it from, it's kind of an odd chord spelling, but one thing that you could try to maybe simplify this is when you go to preferences and then go to event display to chords. So you may want to do like a new custom chord. So let's say we do and then maybe if you define the pitches as a custom chord, that it may show up as you may be able to select it within the logical editor. So maybe give that a try, Patrick. But this way you could, take an alternate chord spelling and be able to kind of maybe manipulate that more with the logical editor. All right, so we see Sydney Thurston. The plugin manager shows VST2 locations. Where would the VST3 location be so I can rescan plugins? My VST3 will not scan. So the VST3 folder is automatically picked up, when you're actually, when the VST3 plugin is installed, and it goes into different folders. So if you're on Windows, it goes into plugins, comment, like program files, then you go to program files, common files, VST plugin, or like program files, common files, and VST3 plugins. If you're on Mac, it's going to go to your VST3 location. If we go not to Safari, sorry, I always make that mistake, my learned mistake. And we go to, if you hold down the Alter Option key and go to Library, to Audio, to Plugins, to VST, I think it's going to be in there. So, you could, so there's like folders, but, let me know which plugin it is and make sure that you have the VST3, installed. But, so it's automatically picked up. And if it's not, again, come over to, because it's a known specified folder as opposed to VST2, which could be installed everywhere. And then people wouldn't be able to find their plugins because one company would put it in this folder and their company would put it into that folder. But, check again the block list to see if it's here. But you could rescan your VST3 plugin folder just by clicking right there, and that would rescan everything that's in the VST3 folder. So if you could let us know which plugin is, if you had to manually move the VST3 plugin to the folder, or if it was an installer that did it, that would be helpful, Sydney. All right, so Roland Stuff asks, "Hi Greg, I'm just starting to learn to use Groove Agent. You showed individual drum parts under Agent a little while ago. Could you show how to put those parts to individual tracks in Cubase?" All right, so if we are, let's take a look at our project here. Okay, so if you want, there's probably two different approaches to this. So I'll show both. All right, so we'll open up this. So let's say as we're playing back, our Groove Agent kit here. Okay, I'm just going to revert my project here. So if you want individual parts, we could do individual parts, or you could just choose to have individual outputs. So if you want individual outputs, like as we're playing a kit here, all right, so check my control room here real quick. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so if we want like our different instrument pads to go out, what we could do is we could choose these. So if I want to take my kick and snare to different outputs, I could, within the mixer of an acoustic agent kit, come over here and choose to route these, and we can see that these mixer channels are added into our project. And if we wanted to actually see these, we could open them up if we wanted to do editing on a project window. So we could do different processing here. If it is a beat agent kit, what we need to do to set the outputs is, as we look at the outputs here in a beat agent kit, we could select the pad and then we could send these to different outputs. And if it's to the point where we have a particular pattern and we want to take each of the patterns and split it to individual tracks, so that's how we can get individual sounds from the Groove Agent to multiple outputs to individual discrete outputs. If I wanted to take all the drum sounds here and create new tracks, I could select the event, go to my MIDI menu, and we will choose Dissolve Part. So at this point, go to let me just so we choose Dissolve Part, and then we could separate pitches. And what this will do is basically automatically take each of the individual drum sounds and put them onto their own track. So one track per sound. So if you want to split up the instruments, you could do that by assigning different outputs. Or if you wanted to take each of the notes and split it to into its own independent track, you could do that using the Dissolve Part from the MIDI menu when it's selected. All right, Uno Memento says the bassist played the track a bit inaccurately. What would be the fastest way to get the sounds at least roughly right? With quantization, yes, but I don't want it to sound like a machine. So generally, a lot of times when I'm treating, like, doing editing on an approach, let's say I'll just take a bass line I played on. I think I still maybe have one. I go for like what part sounds bad to me and then kind of fix that particular edit. All right, let me just... right, so let's say we want to do editing on probably my sloppily played bass part here. Sorry, so. All right, so, if it's like rhythmically off, like, a lot of times I choose not to just quantize everything by default. You can, but I would often, like take the bass part here, and let's get to hit points, and we're going to just kind of find rhythmic hit points, like at rhythmically significant parts of the file. So we'll just kind of come over here and say, okay, let's adjust the intensity. Okay, so now we roughly have kind of hit points where the different notes are. I'm going to now at this point go to my audio menu, and we'll go to real-time processing, and I'll create warp markers from the hit points. I'm going to just switch over my warping tool to free warp, and then as we're kind of listening, I just, so let's say this part was late. So we'll listen to this, and this is Mr. Michael Teens on vocals. So say, oh, that was just wrong, so let me just come here, and I could just now just, that's the note that's bothersome. So we could just kind of come over here and adjust and move just like one or two notes that are like really offensive to you. So you can say, okay, at this point, that note was late. So, and you have the ability to just kind of do kind of like a spot rhythmic correction. But do the hit points, translate those to the real time, translate those to warp markers, and then at that point, once, and if you don't see the warp markers initially, it could be that you're not zoomed in, because otherwise it would just be kind of like a sea of yellow on the waveform. So as you kind of zoom in, you can see the warp markers, and then you could position things pretty easily. And that's a real fast way of just kind of tightening up a performance, especially if the bass player is like not in line with the drums rhythmically. So give that a try, Uno. All right, so we see Patrick Emmanuel A just says what's needed is a repeater plugin in Cubase 13. So let me know if you need it repeated for audio, repeated for MIDI. Or if you need it for automation, what type of repetitions do you need? All right, so we see Ted Springman just says, I'm upgrading to Halion 7 for certain, so very interested in version 8 is fast approaching. So version 7 just came out, like 6 months ago, so I think it'll be a while before we see more like a significant, version 8 of Halion coming, so. All right, so we see Asa Wiggins just says, on a stereo track, is there a way to unlink the left and right channel to, let's say, EQ or gain down only one side of the stereo file? All right, so let's say we want to do it on this. So a lot of people just use kind of like, so let's say we take this and we look at the mix console. It's often just panning could do that very easily. And, you have like different balance modes here. So you could have it as a combined panner as well. So if you want to come here and say I want like a tighter panning, but more favoring the left channel volume-wise or the right channel. can say, okay, let's just do. So that way you could do it, and if you had just a stereo track that, you could also just very easily come here and just if you select the track itself and you go to your project, you can just say, we'll convert tracks and we'll say multi-channel to mono. You can give it different naming configurations, and then you could say, okay, I want to take all these tracks and make those louder, and select those tracks, and we could come over here and just do the opposite. So we'll say convert tracks, mono to multi-channel, and now we could have our imbalanced stereo file in 3 mouse clicks or so. All right, so we see Jay from Secret Studios. Glad you can make it today. His question is some interfaces have DAW interoperability for things like phantom power and interface signal processing from within competing DAWs? Is it possible to control in Cubase? Yeah, so if you have like all the Steinberg interfaces will allow you to turn on phantom power, do cut, gain, and stuff like that. So we could do it for our own interfaces. Often other interfaces don't allow us the access to do that within their particular audio interface, so you have to do it within a control panel. But if you have like a Steinberg interface, all those things and more, including effects, can all be controlled directly from within Cubase, and has that in. That's why we have that, a Cubase version that comes with the hardware, with the nomenclature or the name Cubase AI for the advanced integration. So if you have a Steinberg interface, all that is handled. Other interfaces don't necessarily open it up to us to do. All right, so you see Ash Rebel Hen Studios from Australia. It says he had all the intention of getting up at 3 a.m., but he overslept. He says, I have a question which will stump Greg today. So thanks. Looking forward to it. All right. So all right, so we see Nick. His question is the score editor optimizing display when eighth note triplets tie over the bar into an eighth note and the smallest note in the piece is 16th note. I can create a mess but struggle to get optimal score for print. Okay. Okay, so let's see if I could recreate this for Nick here. All right, so I'll just kind of, let's see if we get entered in the score editor for Nick's benefit. Let's see if we can do this without taking too long. All right, so optimizing display when eighth note triplets tie over the bar into an eighth note and the smallest note in the piece is 16th notes. Okay, so let me just put in some eighth note triplets. So I'll just go over to page mode here. All right, and I'll just kind of blow it up here. All right, so let me just switch this to eighth note triplets. All right, let me just. just just Alright, I'll just jump back so I can start at the right spot here. Alright, so it says eighth note triplets tie over the bar to an eighth note, the smallest note in the piece. Alright, so let's switch this to so I'm going to look at this just quickly in my key editor just to draw it in. Alright, so we want that to tie to be an eighth note. And let me see. So set our display quantize. Let's see if we set that to eighth notes. Okay, let me see if we could just change that. And I'll just reread it here just to make sure. So, an eighth note triplets tie over the bar into an eighth note, and the smallest note in the piece is 16th note. Okay, so maybe now, let's say if I just looking for the little pop over grid. Okay, so we have our note editing overlay. Okay, so I'm gonna set my, let's say you have the smallest note is 16ths. Alright, so when I come over here, let's say I want to now take this note. Let's see what happens if I put I'll put some 16th notes in. All right, let me just all right, so let me just put in just a different note here and see if we get this. Okay, so I click on the D to edit the display duration of the notes. Okay, so let's get to our MIDI note duration here. So again, you get this little popover from here. Okay, so say I just want to put in quarter notes. Okay, so it's all right, let's set this to 8th notes and see if we could adjust. All right, so I'm just going to use the display quantize tool. We'll say so I'm not sure if you need just a 8th note rest after that. But if you have like just an example, like if you want to send it to me at clubcubase@steinberg.de, I could have it down for Tuesday's live stream, Nick. So sorry about that. But I think it could be done. But if you just, even if it's just a cell phone picture of what you want it to look like written out, I could figure out how to get it duplicated. All right, so Jazzy Lomel asks, hey Greg, I would like to know if there's a shortcut for the quick link. So if you want to enable quick link, like, while you're dynamically doing stuff, so as you select, all you have to do is hold down. So if you have multiply selected events like this, hold down Alt. You could just hold down, if you want to do it temporarily, you could hold down Alt or Option plus Shift, and then that would turn on quick link. But there's, I'm sure that you could come over here, and so if you wanted to temporarily link it, or you could just turn it on. Let's see if there's a keyboard shortcut for it that could be assigned as well. But yeah, just try using Alt or Option plus Shift, and that will turn it on just like that. So you could keep it on permanently by that, but if you wanted to just turn it on and then move this, do quick link on the selected events, Alt or Option plus Shift. All right, so we see from Ash Rebel Hen Studios, hi Greg, you rock. Well, that's good. All right, so he's going to stump me now. All right, regarding an issue with Groove Agent, after selecting a drum kit, I go over to the VSTI column and I select Activate Outputs from Input-Output Options. This naturally gives me the option to split each drum into individual outputs, which is great. The problem is when I change the kit in Groove Agent, the VSTI outputs are automatically set to all outputs again, and then I have to reroute each track in Groove Agent. Again, this is very time consuming. Is there a way to stop this from recurring? All right, so let's take a look. And I think there's different behavior for Beat Agent versus Acoustic Agent. So I think it could be done in Beat Agent, but let's take a look. All right, let me just... Okay, so we have a Beat Agent kit here. Okay, so I'm going to activate the outputs here. So as we do this, we'll say this is going out of output 2. This is output 3. And this is output 4. Okay, so I'll just... So output 4, 3, 2, 1. So I think if we click on this lock options, that we could lock the outputs. So as I'm come over here and I load a different kit, that now the outputs are preserved. So this doesn't carry over into the acoustic agent because the acoustic agent is so the outputs are really kind of dependent upon each individual kit for the multi-microphone placement. So if you have one snare and it offers like 3 different room mics versus just one room mic, that won't translate over. But if we're an acoustic, for a Beat Agent kit, you would just click on the little lock symbol. You could lock the colors or choose to lock outputs. So let me know if that's helpful. All right, so we have Steinberg MIDI on. Thanks for joining us today. All right, so we see question from Doug O, and I think this is from the last live stream as well. I had it in my list to cover today. Hi, Greg. Expression maps. Can you show us how to configure program changes under remote settings? I'm not doing something right, as when I draw changes in the key editor, there's no program change. Thanks. Okay, so if you're doing the expression maps, you're not going to, the MIDI messages are going to get kind of remapped from the control to the, let me just open up one here. So here's a missing port message that we had before. So now I could just come over and I'll say, let's take my panorama. I'm going to remap. This is about the missing ports message. So now I could remap that just like that. So, all right. So let's say if you have your expression map, so let's get to our MIDI to expression map setup. Okay. And if we are using different controllers, so, once we come and, if you're switching the articulations from, so it shows how to configure program changes under remote settings. Okay, so we see expression maps. Can you show us how to configure program changes under remote settings? All right, so once this what this is going to do is, instead of using key switches, we could use program change messages. What we're going to do is, let's see, I'm not sure if it's program, so we have program change messages. So once, now what this is going to do is to take this program change. It's not going to be here, but it's going to take program changes from your MIDI controller, not from the inspector, and then the program changes will then do the different articulations. So once you have that, I will just come over here. Let's just choose. We'll import the key switches. So it's not going to be driven by program changes from the inspector. The program changes are what triggers the particular articulation to change. And then you don't enter the program changes. You would just enter, when you enter this, it's sending the program change so that it could change the articulation within the instrument. So it's not the program change that's going to be utilized from like the inspector over here, so this program change is not going to trigger these, but it's a MIDI program change message that is doing it. And instead of using a key switch to switch the, if your instrument is responds to the program changes for the different ones, instead of utilizing a key switch to do it, you're just, just like we wouldn't have a MIDI note with an expression map that's the key switch. This is, instead of having the program change switch the available articulations or having the MIDI notes, these these articulation settings here is using a program change or using a key switch to then switch the instruments. So when you want to switch using program changes, if the instrument or library responds to that, then you would just enter them in here. All right, so you see Ted Springman says, thought for sure Cubase 13 would drop on Friday the 13th. Yeah, and probably Steinberg thought for sure that their online shop provider wouldn't go into insolvency as well. So. Okay, so we see a question from SDCC. When I open a Cubase preset template, it has a drum kit that's played on Hallian. Is there a way to transfer it to Groove Agent to adjust each sample? So once you, let's say if you're starting with maybe a template, So let's say we come over here, we do new project, and we go, let's say, to production. I want a classic rock production. We'll come over, activate. So if you're starting from one of the kind of factory templates, at this point, when you go to, drums, this may be routed out to, Hallian instead. But really all you'd have to do is just come here, switch, you could go to you see your VST instrument rack here, you see Hallian Sonic, switch it to Groove Agent SE. You could have a kit loaded up. So you can say, okay, I just want one from, I want this as my default kit, and just choose to resave the template. You could give it the same name if you wanted to, but that template is just probably an empty, so some of these, you may start off and may play something, but you could just switch it, to play back a different source. All right, so we see from Mike to George, says exactly what I needed to know. Thanks, Greg. We see Steinberg MIDI says, hey, Greg, thanks for that explanation from the last stream. All right, you see kind words from Paul Claridge. It says, thanks for all you do, Greg. So glad to be able to be helpful. All right, so sorry, my chat field just jumped. All right. Sorry, just trying to find my spot. All right, so I think I'm close. Okay. See, Steinberg MIDI says, only time I'm depressed is if Greg is not streaming. So we try to give you 8 hours a week to watch. Keeps me busy and out of trouble. All right. See, Steinberg MIDI says, Greg, that's a Steely Dan chord right there. G sharp minor 11th over F sharp. So it sounds like a Steely Dan kind of chord. So it's always one of the highlights I've gotten to do in my job is to spend 2 days with Donald Fagen, just me and him in a room going over Nuendo with him. All right, you see Stella adores the Cubase live streams, and she's attended hundreds of them. So that's great. All right, so you see Greg on New DAW. You saw option like it's a piano sketch for orchestra. You're just clicking bass note transfer to bass, all middle transfer to violin, upper notes, give flute. Why don't we have it in Cubase? So you could, do that using a logical editor. Say, notes in this range go to this instrument, notes in that range go to that instrument. So, and you could do it kind of in Hallian as well. All right, so Patrick Emanuel A says, Greg, why don't Cubase have mid-side? Any plugins options? Is there any specific reason? So there are mid-side plugins in Cubase. So like when you come over to like frequency EQ, you can have it function in stereo or mid-side. And then this also works for when you're doing, if you're doing dynamics as well. So you could come over here and do mid-side on a dynamic EQ. And it's generally where most, where the vast majority of mid-side processing is going on in dynamics and EQ. So it's already a part of Cubase. Yeah, and as Alex says, actually the width plugin is just increasing the gain on the side channel. So, all right. So Robert Higgins asks, Greg, how do I merge several projects together? Also, I forgot how to unglue audio. Okay, so let's look at ungluing audio first. So come over here to Media. Let's grab some loops. Okay, so now I will glue these together. So, and there's events, like each of these are events, and if I wanted these to be together, we could glue them and it transforms from an event to a part. And now we could have the part editor where we could edit multiple events. So to unglue audio events that have been glued together, go to your audio menu and choose dissolve part. And then all of your events that were maybe perhaps inadvertently or accidentally glued together will be separated. Now, how to add multiple projects into one single project. So let's start off. We could say, we'll start off with this project, okay? Activate it. Then I'm going to move my cursor over here. I will go to my file menu. Let's import tracks from project. I think we can just quickly pop over here. We will choose our bicycle project here. All right, so I want to import these tracks, and I could just have it automatically place it at the cursor position, hit OK. We could copy to the active project folder if needed, and then project 1, project 2. So once again, you can just go to import tracks from project. So if you wanted to put like a whole kind of set together for live use, and just you could have it imported at the cursor position. So let me know if that's helpful, Robert. All right, so we see from DJ Stats. All right, Greg, any update timescale of when the online shop is going to reopen? So I think all of the contracts are going, they're going through all the final contract negotiations with the new provider as we're speaking. So, it's obviously a huge priority for Steinberg, but, we don't want to open it prematurely. So, but, I would say it's coming pretty soon. So there may be a soft launch to make sure everything is going, before like a massive release is done. So there may be a short period of a soft launch just to test the mechanics, to make sure everything is going well. So just kind of, keep your eyes and ears open. And, it's a massive project that's, being undertaken. And, I would say they're kind of ahead of schedule of where they thought they would be. So So we see Ash Rebel Hen Studios can be equally, can have musician jokes at different musicians' expense, drummers and bass players. All right. All right, we see that Mark Rabin has a split. Just wishes everyone is having a tremendously great experience living life. That's such a great sentiment, and we should always be grateful for what we have. But thanks for joining Nick, or thanks for joining Mark, and have a wonderful weekend with Stella. All right, so we see Patrick says repeater plugin for MIDI is what we need, but can Cubase give it for audio? I could be happy with that. So maybe if you could share with me like what the benefit of, so I'll show you just like something you could do as a repeater function. So if you may not be aware of this, let me just open up project. So let's say I have just a quick groove, like I wanted to build a groove agent pattern here. So let's say I have, all right, so there is a local loop function. So, let me know if this is helpful for you. But we'll come over here and we'll make sure that we have, let's see if it's enabled, but you'll see this function for independent track loop. So I'm going to just come over here and we're going to have this project loop. But now that I've activated this function, I want to come over and I'm just going to set just a quick track loop here. So let's just, all right, so now I have this measure repeating. Now you see that one measure is repeating here, this measure is just repeating over and over again. So if you mean like a repeater, like something where you could just kind of come over here and just, so this way when this local loop is on, like this track can repeat over and over again one measure while the rest of the track is repeating independently. So there is like an independent track loop, but a lot of times in Cubase people find it easy enough just to kind of drag parts out to repeat. So if you could let me know if that's kind of what you're thinking, Patrick, that'd be great. There's also MIDI echoes for repeating stuff. All right, great to see Randy Lee from Texas. All right, so we see from Roland Stuff says, thanks for answering my Groove Agent question, Greg. This is really great service. Roland from Sussex in England. So, all right, so we see Jay from Secret Studios says, hey, brother, I've finally fallen into Chasm dubbed as Maddie. All right, so you have lots of I/O options available to you now. Congratulations on getting into the Maddie realm. All right, so we see a question from At The Source Studios. When using CC121, how come I can't learn the quick control within the plugin? I bring the drop-down window up in the plugin, but learn doesn't work, only from the sidebar. I'd like to save the QC preset. So, you know, the CC121 does quick controls, but we can't, you may have to, I think that there are some scripts available, but it doesn't do by default behavior, it doesn't do focus quick controls. So I've kind of asked about it, you know, and the development of the CC121 had ceased before the focus quick controls. So it's the focus quick controls that allow you to adjust kind of all of the parameters, and the focus quick controls allow us to not only kind of, you know, save the particular parameters within the plugin, like I think as we showed last time, but the CC121 is just doing standard quick controls. So that could be why it's not just automatically controlling these, because there's different types of, you know, just make sure I'm just turning on my CC121, put it into quick control mode. So when we go to our quick controls here, you know, these are controlled using when we're in quick control mode, but there's quick controls and focus quick controls. So within the MIDI remote, like when we want to do the plugins, those are going to be utilizing focus quick controls. And I think that there are some scripts available for the CC121 that will allow you to take the encoders and use them as focus quick controls. I know it's confusing. There's kind of track quick controls, instrument quick controls, and with version 12 focus quick controls, so that you could have one set of controls and whatever is currently selected will be working, but the CC121 doesn't work by default as a focus quick control. I know it's a bummer. See, Jazz Dude just says, Steinberg MIDI, did you tell people who you are here, or is it a secret? I'm curious too, so. All right. Okay, so we see At The Source Studios, a suggestion for Cubase, make a VU meter locked to the control room sidebar that shows the gain reduction on selected mix bus comp. Dedicated mix bus style compressor would be cool too. So, you know, if you want to come over here, we could go to your control room, and if you go to inserts, you could say, it may not show the, you know, obviously if you could show like the, you know, the gain reduction within a particular plugin. So if you wanted to, you know, see the gain reduction here, you could just say, okay, let's go to dynamics, and let's, is there like a tube compressor? Let's see if that has, so I mean, if you want to see kind of, you know, it's not dedicated, so this is going to be kind of in the plugin itself. You could have, you can see see the view meter there. You could also just, have an instance of supervision. So let's say if we have this going on. All right, I'm going to activate my. So let me just set my loop control here. All right. Set my independent track loop, and we'll have this go on. Sorry about that. It's annoying to listen to. All right, so let's go to supervision, and let's just switch it to VU. All right. So here, if we wanted to, let me just adjust my gain structure here. It's probably a little too hot. Okay, so I have, let's say, my gain here. Now, something else that you could do is have, sidechain inputs. So if you say, okay, I just want this to be like, if you have everything going into a bus, you could just see particular sidechain inputs if you wanted to, but you could also choose different metering stages. So if you wanted to do like, mid and side, if you wanted to do just the mid or side channel only, but you could do the stereo mix. So you could do the mix down versus the stereo bus. So you could look at different stages here, and if you wanted to make the meter smaller to fit in your control room, you could probably just overlay it there and switch between your different modes for what exactly you want to see. So you can play around with that a little bit as well. So it may not show the gain reduction, but you could see what's going out of the master versus what's just going, so you have different gain stages that you could check out and view quickly. See, Nick says, sorry to have melted your brain, Greg. Said, no problem. I could probably figure it out. It just, but send me just like a quick sketch of a score. So if you want it to be an eighth note followed by like an eighth note rest, but I'll play around with it. But I think I could get it down for you. Yeah, just see Nick will send a file if he gets a moment. So yeah, and if you do that, then I could be happy to kind of recreate it. So see, at Source Studio says I think piano is the hardest instrument because you have to learn how to read music in depth in really order to see any meaningful progress. So there's a lot of people play piano by ear, so it seems to do well. But at least piano, like, it's not harder to play particular notes. Some instruments playing higher is harder. Like if you're to play really high on trumpet, that's harder, but playing higher on piano isn't as hard. So each instrument has their own issues. So. All right, wonderful. Sable Winters has made it. So we see happy Friday the 13th to everyone. So great that you can make it. Hope you're well. All right, so Steinberg MIDI is going to watch some Friday the 13th movies with Jason in it. My son was asking about him. I had to play dumb. So Steinberg maybe says, I would say Groove Agent is by far the best drum VST and people sleep on it. So clear my throat real quick. All right, sorry about that. Okay, reading through comments again. So. All right, so my chat field just jumped. Let's make sure I'm not missing any questions. Okay, see discussion. Michael Pierce and Jay kind of discussing some Maddie stuff. All right, so we see David M. has made it. Wonderful to see you from Liverpool area. I think we're missing John Costigan today. Maybe he's lurking. All right, so we see at the Source Studios asks, please explain gluing audio processes too. Sometimes it glues what I want, sometimes it brings up older takes, etc. I don't know. It's inconsistent for me. All right, so so realize if we have, let's say we have this audio event here. All right. Here, I'll just drag some in. All right, so sometimes what can happen, let's say these are glued together. So again, gluing audio events together turns them into a part. Now, once you're in the part editor, and sometimes this can happen if you've done comping on parts, it could be, let me just see if I'm here and I want to record, let's say, a new audio event. All right, let's see if we can get this deal I want. Okay. So let's say I had stacked parts that were comped. At this point, I'll just, if we have multiple takes, just realize that sometimes, if you have comped parts, that those comp parts can be, could still be lurking. So open up the part editor, because if you've done stacked recordings, like multiple recordings on the same track, they may still show up and, and kind of pop in between other parts. And, so a lot of people I know, who've kind of first started before we had the comping tool in version 6 or 6.5, they would just kind of do all of their comping here and assemble. But this is a real easy way, once you're in a part editor, to have multiple takes that may not be so visible. So open up the part editor and see if you have other takes that might be causing the problems. And again, once you're here, to undo that, to see everything, you could just, again, go to your audio menu and choose to dissolve part. And then you could see the part. So make sure you don't have other events that are kind of overlapping or underlapping unexpectedly for you. All right, sorry for hitting my mic. Uno Momento asks, I have a project that includes audio and MIDI parts. They do not follow the click somehow. They play together well and in time, but the MIDI click is out of time. Starts okay, but later off the beat. So if you notice that, I mean, that's kind of when a lot of times, you could do a tempo detection. If it's going to be like at this point, maybe it's consistently off. If we go to let's say we notice that it's off, go to the warp tool and just go to warp grid, and then what you could do is just kind of move the actual bars to fit. And you may not want to have all of the events be in musical mode for this, but what you could do is just say, oh, this is where the downbeat should be, is just go into warp grid, and then basically you just move the measures to fit with the events. You say that's where this measure should be, and you move the measures to fit the events. So try that, and you could always do a tempo detection on tracks if you need to as well. All right, so you see from Robert Higgins, just says very helpful, Greg. Thank you. So you're welcome. Glad it helped. All right, so we see Eric McCann asks, any idea when image sounds purchased from the Steinberg online shop will be added to the new licensing system? Finest Roots Reggae, pedal, steel guitar, pop, and R&B vocals. I haven't heard of that. I mean, I'll just take a quick look and see if it's on the licensing. Sometimes it's up to the third-party manufacturer to do it. I'm not sure. I'm usually not privy to all those details. But we'll take a quick look. All right, so it's going to be Roots Reggae, so let me just I don't see those. So I don't know, Eric. Doesn't look like they're in here, but you could always reach out to, like we kind of do the purchase platform, but I'm not sure if we necessarily update the licensing scheme, the licensing process for the company, but maybe if you check with Image Sounds just to make sure. All right, so we see that Peter has made it back after getting snow tires. He's being very diligent and getting his snow tires early for his El Nino weather, his El Nino winter in Montreal. We're glad he can make it back today. See, Steinberg MIDI says that VU meter is so beautiful. So. All right. All right, so we see Jammin and Canon. Am I too late? So nope, we have another like 48 minutes to go or so. All right, so we see Patrick Manuel A just saying thank you, Greg. All right. All right, so we see from Thomas Bishop, is there a way for auto scroll to retain position when switching MIDI track editors on a separate screen? Now I have to activate the screen, then press F twice to regain the position. All right, so I don't have a second screen, but let me see if I could replicate this a bit. All right, so I'll just... Okay, so let's imagine this is my secondary screen. Okay, so let's say that we're... Alright, I'll just mute it because it's kind of nonsensical. Alright, I'll just glue these together. Alright, so it says when... This is a way to auto scroll to retain position when switching MIDI track editors. Alright, so I'm just going to change the color. Let's say I will duplicate this and let's transpose this down. Okay, so let's say I have this. I want to, alright, just retain position view when switching MIDI track editors on a separate screen. Okay, so let's say we have our auto scroll. Alright, so let's say we had this set to stationary cursor. And now I'm going to so this is have both of these selected. So one of the things we could do, sorry, it's just annoying sound. So if they're both selected, you could just toggle back and forth between them. So this way we could just kind of go back and forth between the two of them. But if I have this open, let's say on a separate screen, I'll just change my preference here. So we just double click, opens into a separate window. So it looks, let me know if I'm misunderstanding the question, but it looks like I don't have to reset everything when it's in a separate window just by kind of double clicking. It seems like the auto scroll is retaining the position, but Thomas, let me know if I'm not understanding the question right. But if you have both of them selected, you could just come over here and switch between multiple parts like that as well. So that way you could choose which one is active, but you can see both parts. And then I think if you don't want to necessarily see the other part, you could just come over and switch. But let me know if I'm misunderstanding, Thomas. Sorry about that. Okay, so we see Jammin' and Cannon asks, having a problem with an automated fade out on the master bus with my strings track, taking the volume on its track down to nil. I suspect this is the VSTI, but I'm not sure. Thanks in advance. All right, so let me just take a string track here. So it could depend on, like different instruments will respond to, different dynamics settings. But here we'll just take this cello part here. And if I quickly wanted to okay, so it says having a problem with automated fade. So let's say I just wanted to come here to my input output channels. I will just come over here. Let's get to, so just revert this because I put them now. And we see now that I remapped that particular MIDI port. I didn't get the message when opening this again. So just a question from earlier. All right, so let's say, so I can go to my input output channels and I'll just grab my line tool. I'll just move that so we can hear it sooner. So that seems to kind of work, but you know, if you could let me know, jamming in Canon, exactly what problem you're running into. All right, so you see Peter went in for a tire change and walked out with new front tie rods. It's always fun. Okay, so we see from Jamin Cannon says about the question about the strings library. So it's a BBC orchestra with con and contacts, Rhapsody, orchestra colors, both doing the same. When I nudge the mod wheel, it's fine until the next playback, and then no niente. So make sure that you actually have the automation written in, but you know, certain instruments will only do the dynamics based on, you know, the MIDI CCs. All right, so you see kind of a clarification from Thomas Bishop. Let me just find it. It says playback fixes it, but what if I don't want to move the playback position? Okay, so let's see if we still have this project open. So let's say we're here. Now if I go to different spots, so each editor, so, you know, try, you know, maybe if you have multiple parts, maybe selecting the multiple events and then, you know, do it from within one editor screen. So, and if you want to send a more detailed email, you can reach me at clubcubase@steinberg.de. Sorry about that. All right, wonderful to see Gerald Elion says on an auto fade question, what cello did you use from Howling 7? So I think it's just the one from Iconica. Yeah, so it's just from Iconica, from sections and players. And then if you wanted to switch, articulation. Then you could adjust like the mic position, so if you wanted to adjust like the Decca tree mic. And you can activate surround as well. So it's really, Iconica is really wonderful library. All right, so we see Gaming Octopus. In the quantized panel, could you explain the differences between 100% position and original position? Are they essentially the same thing? All right, let's take a look at it. Okay, so I'm not sure if this is with. All right, so I'll just do just a quick. Yeah, I think the original position only becomes I think with this, the original position will only come through, it's only when it's applied to the groove quantize that those features come up. So I think that the original position will be, so let's say if we are here, we see the instrument track, we could have the original position, but here we could also have just so 100%, I believe that 100% and original would be same, and then you could adjust the amount of the quantization here if needed. So I think that those would be the same. But again, this option is only available when you have like a groove quantized preset. Otherwise, it's not available. And then you have the 100% function just for the position to use with any quantized value. Okay. All right, so we see Gerald Ely just says, cool, just bought Iconica section and players recently. I've been playing with the articulations and comparing to HSO. Okay. Okay, so we see from Uno Memento, says, Greg, maybe you didn't understand my question, but the audio tracks follow the tempo track and the MIDI doesn't. Where's the problem? Okay, so if the MIDI is not following, it could be that there's a couple things that could prevent, sorry for my misunderstanding. So it could be a couple of things. One, the track itself may be put into linear mode versus musical mode. So make sure that your track is set to musical mode, then it's going to follow the tempo changes. And also make sure that the track isn't locked. So, you could come over here and lock the position of the track. Now, sometimes what happens is if you run into a scenario where you've done a tempo detection, but there was previously existing MIDI, and I'll show you an example of this. Okay. So, it could be, so a lot of times what may happen is if we have like a MIDI thing that's, let's say we listen to our example project here. And let's say I have like a 4 and a floor pattern for the kick. Okay, so if this has varying tempo and this doesn't, there's also just a lock feature here on the particular track. So if there's existing MIDI information on the track and you do a tempo detection, then the MIDI's not quite locking up to it. Realize that what we have to do is to select the track and lock it. So we're going to lock these positions to the grid. Now do a tempo detection. So we will come over here, do our tempo detection, analyze. All right, I think we have like a slight pickup note here. And we'll listen to, so now at this point, let you know what I'm about. So if I didn't, so we'll come here, let's put in just a 4/4 bar. All right, so now I'm going to unlock the track. So now that we've done this, the MIDI is now following the tempo of the audio. But if I didn't lock it, we'll show you what happens. So I'll put this in musical mode, and we see that this is like my notes are just right on the grid. So now that I do my tempo detection on the event with this event not locked, so we'll come do the tempo detection. So now this is totally off the grid because this is, what was the beat on the previous is staying in the same position. So that's why you have to kind of lock it first. But make sure that, if you had existing MIDI and then did a tempo detection, before you do the tempo detection, lock the MIDI, and that way it'll remain on the grid. So okay. So we see Best Green Jesus says, I really thought they would drop 13 on Friday the 13th. I think it's more of an American thing, but, All right, so we see a question from Gaming Octopus. Is it possible to tempo map MIDI? So yeah, so we'll show you that. It's really the same process. All right, so let's say we have MIDI here and there's no correlation between it. So I would just select the MIDI event and do my tempo detection. And now so same procedure. Actually, interestingly enough, it was the audio that came first, the tempo detection, before MIDI. And I think MIDI would be easier, but I'm not a software developer. All right, so I know we had one question that was on, I saw on the live stream from last time, and it was about how to align vocals. I think it was from At Source Studios, and I didn't get a chance to answer it on the last one because we ran out of time. But it was how to kind of align multiple voices to a single track. So let's go ahead and show that. So almost like an alignment of background vocals. Let me see if I have this one project still open. Yeah. All right, so we'll come here. So let's look at like these background vocals, and we'll notice that these will be out of time with each other, just kind of even looking at it visually. Okay, so if we wanted to tighten this up, we could open up the alignment panel, and you could just do this. Let me just hide one, my nudge panel here. We'll see more. So you'll see this little icon here, or you can go to audio to alignment. So I'm going to select an event. So we'll see audio. I think it's in the audio menu. Maybe project. Open alignment panel for an audio menu. So I want to select one track as the source file. So I'll add that, and I could select these particular tracks as my targets. And then we could set, you want to match words, prefer time shifting. So I'll just say align the audio. And it's thinking a little too long here. I must have other tracks selected, sorry, other events. It's doing a bunch of drum tracks, like a whole song drum tracks. Okay, so now we can see as we do this, we'll go ahead and hit play. Yeah, I selected the tom tracks, but you can see right now that we just kind of aligned it. I probably had those tracks selected as well. And this is like also a perfect solution for if you have like a bass DI and a bass mic or 2 or 3 guitar mics and maybe like an acoustic guitar direct signal. You can just simply do all that. So just doing all my different drums. So
Somos iguales.
all right, so you can hear how that's
Somos iguales. Somos iguales.
so much tighter than it was previously with that. So again, you could just come over here. You see this little icon here. That's the alignment panel. Choose your source, choose your destinations, and then click on Align Audio. All right, so you see Jazz Dude just says, may I suggest a special release hangout with some prizes to win, some with Cubase sound content libraries. Should be an easy task, and maybe one Cubase 13 update license. So we'll see if we can get something along those lines. Maybe we'll do, we haven't done our live stream trivia in a while, so maybe when we do a Cubase, when the next version of Cubase is released and we do kind of our live stream walkthrough, we'd be happy to see if we get some prizes. We'll do our Club Cubase live stream trivia. So everyone will have to study up. Okay, so we see a question from Steinberg Rookie. Hi, how do I record VST onto audio track while playing along with tempo map? Could you show an example of this? I'm basically wanting to play VST live to tempo map. Okay, so let's say if we have, let's go back to our tempo detection here. So I'll revert this project. All right, so let's say we don't have a, so I just wanted to play, maybe I wanted to add snares to it. So let's go to our mix console. All right, so I want to do my tempo map again. So we'll come over here. So I want to add snares directly to this, like I want to play along beats 2 and 4. So we'll go to our project menu after selecting it. Let's do our tempo detection, analyze, and if we have and this will, figures out by beat. So at this point we could say our downbeat is here. So now I want to just record like perhaps the snare on top. So I'll just take this track volume down, and I won't arm that track for record. I'll put the Groove Agent track in record. So I will turn on the metronome. So you could just record directly on top, record new MIDI information, direct. Let me clear my throat. Record the new MIDI track using the tempo map extracted from the audio or from a MIDI event, and just record directly on top of that. And then you could edit and have it aligned to the grid as necessary. Okay, so you see from Soren, Greg, there's a comparison between Iconica ensembles and sections and players, but not opus. Can you tell us what's extra in opus over sections and players? So I think opus is sections and players is basically the two of them together. So it's sections and players and Iconica ensembles. It's both of them, at this, basically both of the libraries together for an extra discount. All right, so we see from Sable Winters, question, I never use sends. How does that work? What's the purpose? So generally, like a lot of times if we're doing a mix in a project, we may want to use a common reverb for all of our different tracks. So I'll just come over here. We'll start with this. So if we want like the acoustic guitar and piano and vocal to use the same reverb, or I'll just give a more exposed example. All right, so let's say I want the guitar and I'll just kill all the reverbs here. Okay, so I'm going to select a guitar. All right, so I want to take the guitar and vocal, and I want them both to have reverb. So instead of having a reverb for the guitar and a reverb for the vocal, I want them to sound as if they're in the same room. So I'm going to select both of these tracks, and this is an easy way to kind of do the routing, and we'll say let's add an effects channel to the selected channel. So let's add a reverb. So let's do Revelation. Okay, so now what we could do is use the send to adjust the balance between the dry signal and the effect. So we're going to basically, and we could think of and how this used to work in old studios is they would have a very reflective room, and they would have a speaker and a microphone in that room. So they would send the signal to their reverb chamber, their echo chamber, and record the sound and return it back to the mixer. So when we listen to our guitar, we're going to hear dry. And now I could use the send to blend the amount of dry signal versus processed signal. So the more that this goes, the more reverb we hear, and the less reverb we hear here. So this way we could kind of blend the amount of reverb. Maybe I want the vocal to sound like it's in the same room. So that's probably too much reverb.
Our first kiss, there was no regret right after that Garth Brooks show.
So now instead of using an insert that's dedicated to a particular track,
and he called my mom, said you were too damn good for any boy that dumb.
and now we could take both of the channels and we go to our sends here.
That was a long, long time ago.
And we could adjust the amount. So maybe in a chorus, may want more reverb or less reverb. So this allows us to kind of send to the effect in varying amounts, so we could find just a perfect balance. And this way, instead of running, like if we had 12 tracks, instead of running 12 separate reverbs, we can run a single reverb and have all those tracks go to the single reverb, and that could save on your CPU utilization. Now you see Michael Pierce jumping in with some great explanations. Yeah, and Michael Pierce is saying a lot of times in the old days you had one reverb, like hardware box, or sometimes studios would have like one really nice reverb, and you want as many tracks going to like the $10,000 lexicon as you could to get the most mileage out of it in your session. See, Soren just says, Opus is fantastic, I think. He said, not that I have it, but I want it. So. All right. Okay, so we have a question from Tommy C. Hi, Greg. Could you show how to import IR convolution impulses to Cubase Reverb plugin? Also, how to find or buy them to import. So when we use, for the convolution reverb that we have is called Reverence. So I'll just add it here, and it's really simple. And the concept of convolution reverb, and it's kind of like sampling. We could do synthesizers and use FM synthesis to kind of create like a Rhodes piano, or you could sample the Rhodes piano. So often, the samples are what, can sound more realistic. So with Reverence is basically using samples as the resource. That's the basis for the reverb. So when we look at these, and we could actually just kind of audition. I'll just turn this up, and if you click on this little icon here, we could just hear what this IR, an IR is an impulse response. And we can think of it as a reverb sample. So if I browse, let's say I want to go to a large Viennese concert hall, and we listen to it now. That's what that would sound like. Now to import IRs, and you could find these floating online. A lot of people have created, impulse responses. A lot of people will sell impulse responses. It's really easy. All you have to do is import, select the WAV file, and then that will be your impulse response that could be added directly into Reverence. So just use the import button, and then you'll be all set. All right, so we have Charles asks, hi Greg, I have a guitar that is doing eighth notes with a slow half-step bend. Is there a way to extract the MIDI from the DI and use that to overdub it with a synth, the same exact pitch variations? All right, so let's say if it's kind of more of a monophonic source, so let's say I have a bass part here, so it's fretless. part. So I'm just going to come over here, and we'll see that we want to have kind of the natural. And let me just. Oh, wrong part. Let's just look at just the bass part here. Okay, so when we look at. Let me just turn my control room down here just a bit. So if you wanted to, if it's kind of like a monophonic guitar part, all you'd have to do is you'll see here under choose function, and here we could just choose extract MIDI from within the Very Audio. So open it up in the sample editor, go to Very Audio, do its analysis, and now we could come over, extract the MIDI information, and then you'll have options to include notes and the pitch bend information. So, and if you have like a VST 3.5 instrument like Halion, it could have a lot more, a much greater resolution for the pitch bend. So at this point, you could just carry over the pitch bend data and extract kind of those like scoop notes as MIDI pitch bend for the particular instrument so that they could be matched up. All right, so we see from Sable says, Greg, thanks, that explains it. I messed up songs messing with sends, so. All right, so we just see Jazz Dude has a release of the Bricasti Impulse responses free to download in the Discord. All right, so we see, how can I convert a MIDI track to audio, asks my friend. I tried to explain, but he wants Greg's answers. I'm sure Uno Momento's answer is just fine. But an easy way to do it is select the event, go to your edit menu, and then we go to render in place. So we could, select the event, select the track. So edit to render in place. We'll go to our render settings. We could have it as one event. We could have it dry with no effects. We could have it if I had EQ, if I had send effects like our reverbs that we just added with Sable's question, or if we had master processing. So at this point, I could just say render. And what we could do is it's going to basically just turn this MIDI track that's a virtual instrument into an audio track. So give it just a second here. All right, and so we could just come right over here, and that way we could just render it just like that. So just come over to edit to render in place. All right. All right, so we see from Charles, just says, thanks, Greg, awesome as always. All right, and we see Jazz Dude, links for the Bricasti is about 1 gigabyte. All right, so we see Sable just saying she's still skittish and she'll play along with the song that she doesn't care messing up. So if you don't save the project, you'll be fine, so. All right, so we see Michael just says, I just came in recently. Did I miss something about Cubase 13? Greg is in Cubase 12 at the moment. So as soon as Cubase 13 is released, we will be doing all the live streams with Cubase 13. You may see a project that may say Cubase 12 in the project title, but as soon as I only show the versions that are available for people to use. So. All right, and Michael Pierce is telling Sable that the like doing delay throws with sends are really easy. So, and it's fun. So you're not going to really break anything, Sable. So, all right. So we'll see if there's any more questions that come in. We've got about 2 minutes left. I want to thank everyone for all the great questions. If you've learned a new tip or trick, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure that you hit the like button. And tell your friends, and let people know that we're doing this. I think it's kind of a cool service. I appreciate everyone's wonderful questions. I want everyone, and just spending part of your, evening, morning, afternoon with us is always wonderful. All right, so you see just a question. Is there a release date for Cubase 13? So nothing that's been announced. So, and it's kind of a general policy of Steinberg not to announce things before they're released. So, all right. But yeah, so, we appreciate everyone taking their time to learn more about Steinberg products. There's a lot of exciting things coming. So, and as soon as we're able to show them, we will. All right. My son just walked into the room. Everyone can say hi to Ryan real quick. All right. And I guess Ryan's waving hi to the screen. Say hello to everyone all over the world. All right. And so I guess let's see if there's any more questions. All right. See Best Green Jesus just saying thank you. So thanks for being on. It's always wonderful to see you on the live streams and with everyone else. Such a wonderful group of people to spend my Tuesday and Fridays with. And I guess we're just about out of time. So let's just take a quick look. But everyone have a wonderful weekend. And we want everyone to stay safe and healthy. And we'll be back. Oh, we see Pablo has made it. All right. It's always so wonderful to have Pablo on. All right. Look, people are saying hi to you, Ryan. All right. All right. You want to say hi in the mic?
Hi.
All right. All right. So with that, we will go ahead and wrap up. Thanks again for everyone's wonderful questions. I hope it was a great session for people learning tips and tricks. And we'll be back on Tuesday starting at 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you on Tuesday. Goodbye.